Hey, good morning, everybody. It's John Wayne Mullins with Mr. New Dad, and we're talking about two dads talking self care today. So I certainly appreciate each and every one of you being here. It's been an exciting week, and for everyone who is a veteran or my fellow Marine Corps co host and my other Marines, happy birthday to you. And if you are a veteran, thank you for your service. It's been an interesting week. It's something I'm certainly learning as I've been processing how to be a new dad, the challenges that come up, and how to be prepared. And the more and more I learn, what I'm learning about becoming a dad, I it just makes me think that like what I'm doing with Mr. New Dad, there is so much value here, and I'm certainly appreciative of Ben, kind of going along this journey with me. Hey, good morning, Bob. Thanks for being here. So anyway, I just want to turn it over to Ben and give him an introduction. So I'll turn it over to you, Ben.
Thank you for that warm welcome. Talk about self-care because we always got to start with a good cup of coffee. That is self-care when you're talking as a dad, because that is the lifeblood sometimes that morning booted. I know for me, when it comes to Veterans Day week, it's one of those like crazy weeks that the more as it's kind of funny to say this, but I had to learn how to be a veteran. And for me, as I learned to be a veteran, connect with my story, figure out what my story was, make peace with it, that was something that I had to grow through over a good course of like 15 years. So Veterans Week continues to be something that I continue to dive deeper and deeper into. And every year I have a deeper meaning on it.
Yes, absolutely. It's my favorite week of the year because it's one of the things that when I lived in DC, I got to really experience a lot of veterans. And I used to always go down the wall and meet so many people and hear their stories. So I appreciate that. But it's something that I think you have to learn how to live into that story and know how to really take care of yourself post service. And it's something I think that this message, even though we're kind of targeting towards new dads, if you're a man and you've ever become a dad, you know exactly what we're talking about. And so, good morning, Jonathan. Thanks for being here. I certainly appreciate you. And if you guys have any questions as we go through, we will get to them, but we'll go ahead and get started. All right. So, like I said, if you are a dad or if you're a new dad, this is something that obviously becoming a dad is a big job. I am a dad of a 7-month-old son, and I am learning so much. And as I've gone through this journey of him being born, preparing for his birth, becoming a dad, um, I I realize that the coach in me realized that when it comes to uh, uh, developing that dad, developing that man, developing that leader of yourself, of your home, of your marriage, there's no one really talking about how to become that dad. And so when I thought about, if fulfilling this new role of being a big dad or fulfilling this role of the type of dad that I wanted to become, no one was talking about it. So I started doing my research. I started, reaching out. I found people like Ben, who are pouring into dads. And so that's what kind of started this to where we are today. Because one thing that I'm learning is that it is a long journey, and it certainly takes a lot of hard work, a lot of patience with yourself, especially because there's a lot of maturing. And what I've learned from other dads is that every season there's multiple seasons. Right now, I'm in the very first season. Just wait till they're 2, 4, 5, and so forth. So that's kind of
I
like
always joke, you will always appreciate when they're 15 and you'll be thinking it was so much easier being your dad when all I had to do was wipe your butt. And so it always reminds you that these seasons are always changing, and appreciate what the season has given you, even though it's not always the ripest and the best season that you feel like. The seasons just get harder and the questions get more closer to real life. And so when those early years, like nothing's really going to be that game-changing ending. But later, as they get older, it may feel like that for them. So it's often like, depending on the conversations I'm having, I'm like, man, it was just so much easier when all I had to do was keep you alive.
But let me ask you this, as you know, because you're a few years ahead of me when it comes to taking care of yourself so you can be your best dad, best self, best husband. Does it get harder? Do you have to be more intentional than you already are when they were just 6 months old?
The pressure goes down. So like in those early years, the pressure feels really intense that you have to sacrifice so much of your life, your freedom, your personal life that you maybe do after work or fun things that you and your wife used to do. Those things seem to be like the first thing to get jettisoned. Those are easier to add back in. Like babysitters are easier to get when they get older, so you can spend more energy and focus on getting one-on-one time away. The younger years are just kind of those years where you got to hang on. But at the same time, that self-care really comes down to really just probably being mindful, that putting a space between the world that's in front of you, the screaming baby maybe, and what's real.
Right.
Because as a dad in those first few months, you feel like the world's burning down a little bit, and it can feel very internalized that I'm not good enough. I can't make this baby stop crying. And you internalize that as I'm not a good father because I don't know how to work this manual that I didn't get. And it's not really the reality. It's the reality that everybody goes through. And the baby doesn't interpret who you are. So for me, like the one advice that I would go back and give myself that I didn't do a really good job is putting space, being mindful that what's happening in real life, there's a space between that and who you are. And that
Mm,
real life doesn't define who you are. And maybe even an argument that you might have with a coworker or a spouse, like these things aren't permanent. They're just a reflection of people's current emotional state, which is generally burnt out. So put some space between who you think you are and who you are and what reality is happening. Because oftentimes when we start interacting with it or taking it personal, that's when resentment can build. That's when communication can break down. And then it becomes a sliding slope of disaster that you're trying to pull the plane out of before you hit the ground.
mm, yes, I 100% agree with that. And it's something that I've learned is, especially on those, like last night, we were up at 3 a.m. He wasn't sleeping, and I've been up for a while. But it's how do you prepare? How do you go along your day knowing that, hey, I still have things to do, I still have things to get done, and be mindful of that. Hey, I've only gotten 4 or 5 hours of sleep. I can't attack everybody, or I can't explode because I'm not sleeping. Or you just have to find ways to still take care of yourself, but like you said, be mindful of that. So
I'll go one further that I think a lot of men don't feel safe being a dad at work or acknowledging they're a dad, that they actually have to puff up their chest and be someone that they're not capable of because they're up at 3 in the morning and they have to posture like they have everything together. Have conversations with the people at work, your manager, your coworkers. Be transparent with what reality looks like. You'll be hard pressed to find someone that doesn't empathize, especially if they have a family. But when you try to go into a space where you're portraying something else than the truth, you're gonna spend a lot more energy, stress yourself out trying to keep a persona that's not really reality. And that transparency and that communication with your manager, it's only going to deepen your connection with him and his ability to help you and to make sure that your plate's stacked work and be managed properly with what you've got going on. But men don't feel safe
mhm.
within the workplace. And it's almost speaking with the paternity leave problem that we have as men as well, that there's just not this place where men can acknowledge, I am a dad and I want to be a dad and I want to have a conversation with you about how I can make sure I manage this time in my life, which is never coming back. And
Right.
that to me is one thing that I didn't do, but it would have changed everything as well.
Right. After our last webinar, there was a few people that followed up, and they said that was their biggest challenge is learning how to be dad at work, but then also learning how to have conversations because, like you said, there's so much pressure on dads to perform and lead and be in their positions. But now you have this, more important role, this human who is relying on you as well as your wife, is how do you have those conversations? And we talked a little bit about that. And, if that's you, that's something that I've learned, have that conversation with your boss because, like you said, the more transparent you can be with him, the more opportunity you're going to open the door to empathy and allow that. Oh, John's getting 4 hours of sleep. He's probably not going to be in his best self. I can back off on him, or I'm not going to put so much pressure or stress on him because I know he's probably not his best self, and that's okay, you know. So something I've learned along the way.
And I think there's a moment within there that a dad also has to learn, this is who I am now. And if you go to that conversation and you have it with your manager, then you know if it does go bad, if they don't really show any empathy and they tell you that you have to turn that side of you off, there's your warning sign that this relationship you have at work is not going to be one that allows you to be the best version and the best dad that you can be. And learning that lesson early on, that can change everything. Instead of working somewhere for 5 years where being a dad isn't supported, and you wake up for 5 years after 5 years and like, I need to get a different job. Meanwhile, you've missed those 5 years, and then you have this internal conflict that you have to work through of how to turn it back on and get back to where you want to be. Having those conversations and transparent also helps you understand, I don't think I might be in the right place as well.
You know, that's such a, I feel like you're really talking to me now because, when I started my business 3 years ago, but, I came off active duty last March. I got recalled to help out with COVID. And there was an eternal fight that I probably still have about like, oh, I got to get clients to build my business. I got to do this. Or, oh, I have to make sure I have income. I have to make sure that I, have work to do. All the while, this internal dialogue that I'm having with myself, I have a 2-month-old, I have a 3-month-old, and I'm like, why stressing out? One, you're okay. I planned for this season, but don't stress out because just like you said, you will never get this time back. And so telling myself that, I've had to learn how to really be present in the moment and really enjoy this season, because every new dad that I always talk to, they always say the same thing, is enjoy this season because you'll never get it back.
Something else I'll season it with, and we can move on to the next topic of that can happen a lot, especially like depending on where you're at in your career. Lots of things can come into your life. Good ideas like, man, that would be awesome to invest time in, or that would be awesome to dive into that business. Remember that every idea can be good, but it doesn't always have to fit into the season that you're in. And I can't tell you how many ideas I have that are parked for when the kids are out of school and they're out of our house and it's just me and my wife, or when they're in high school and they're not wanting to hang out with me as much anymore. All these ideas can be good. They just don't always have to fit in the season. So give yourself permission to like, that's a good idea. It's just not yet. And I can put that into the future. We have a lot of life ahead of us, dads, and we don't need to conquer the world right now. And if we really want to change the world, we really have to show up to our kids right now. So that's something I always balance with. It's really hard. I empathize with what you were saying as well. But also remember, we go off in the world to try to influence, to change it, make it better. But our best chance to change the world is just show up to our kids. And right in the beginning years, that's when you get that relationship. That's when you create that safety, and the foundation is laid for all the other building blocks and conversation that you have with them later in life.
Yeah, no, that's so true. I appreciate that. Thanks, Ben. Moving forward, as we talk about self-care, there are obviously there's a few different areas that we're going to be focusing on today. Is when it comes to what makes you you. Think about the dad or the man that you were pre-baby. All your disciplines, all your habits, all your routines, they're still there. Don't change those. You may have to make those stronger, put in some boundaries to keep those in place. But the whole purpose of this conversation is for you to answer that question of what makes you you, and what areas do you need to keep, and what areas maybe you need to put off to the side for this season of either becoming a new dad, or if you're in that season like where Ben is, what are the things that can really help you when it comes to habits, disciplines, routines? What works, and only you know the answer to this question. But I'm going to be sharing a few tips that I've learned about myself, about how I lead myself in some of these different key areas of my habits and disciplines and things that I need in order to really show up and have my cup really full. So as we go through the next couple of slides, there's just going to be a couple different key topics of, emotional, physical, spiritual, and mental areas of you. So
for me on this one, there's a real funny story that I want to share, that often being a dad, especially in these new years, first few months, it's a war inside your head. Like the entire thing isn't really physical. It's just this battle that you're having inside your head. So the one place that I learned a couple of years ago that was an odd thing was when I go for a run out in the summer and it's up here in Wisconsin, like you're sweating in the morning, your shirt's drenched, finding places where you can actually like feel the real physical of work, the output of something that's not something that's just in your head. Because measuring progress in your head is difficult. Measuring whether you're making progress is also difficult. But when you find things that like you can exert physical effort towards and see or feel the sweat come back, those kind of remind you and balance like this is real. What I just did, this like physical work, that was real. This other stuff is just things that I'm working through my head. And to me, the more times that you can find ways to do things that are physical, that aren't just things that are in your head or exercises of thinking or reading, like you don't often need an exercise in your brain, but that physical exercise in any form really can help you balance that. Like that was real. That feeling, the feeling of gratitude that you have after you do have a drenched shirt, that feeling will help you balance and like get you just to get out of your head and into the real world a little bit, because that balance with what's real and what's imaginary, that is the front lines battle of being a new dad and sorting that out. Is this a real feeling? No, this is just something that I'm internalizing. I need to let go. But the more times you get physical with it, the better that feeling can be washed away of like, man, that really wasn't real. And everybody knows the health benefits of being physical and active. So like those just help compound and give you that space in that emotional space in your head, but also what's real.
I know you were on the farm last week, Ben, and I wanted to actually ask you about this. Is spending that time with your dad and being out in the farm is how does that tie into your is that an escape for you, or is that something that you just regularly fit into your schedule?
It's definitely an escape. It's not something I've always been perfect at fitting in my schedule. It's easier now that I'm an entrepreneur, but back when I had a job, it was often where I would like try to time a vacation day or something where I would get off, and it would be hard because I maybe have some work meetings that I go work. And the farming schedule is not something you can predict, whether it be the rain or when things are going to be ready. But I can't say every time that, even when I did have a job and now when I go back, the simplicity, anytime you can go back to a simple moment. I mean, there's no emails chasing you on a combine. There's no issues. Now the combine can break down, and it actually did. We lost a whole day working on the combine, but it was again working with our hands and trying to get this thing taken apart and figure out what was wrong, put it back together. There was just something natural about that wasn't compounded by our electronic world or our world of connecting on social media. Like there was no imaginary noise. It was just what was in front of me. And so that's another way that you can also phrase it. Like try to do things that you can see with your hands that are right in front of you. Like woodworking is a common one that people could say they do. Like the more things that you can just do that are right in front of you, again, let all this world that even this webinar that we're talking on, all of it is out there on the line, to quote the Social Network movie. And the more you can find that space is better, because to me, like that analogy you pointed out for me, going to the farm is how I slow down, and I just remind like this world is good and it's where I'm at, but right here just helps me kind of reconnect with what matters.
Right. No, that's good. That's good. So, like we said, we know that if you're a healthy dad, if you're taking care of yourself, you're going to have a healthy family. But how do you get there? And so as you think about, what do you need to do to take care of yourself in these four key components? And we all have different habits. We all have different routines. And so like I said, I wanted to share a couple different things that work well for me. And these are just 2 to 3 things that really make me me. But one of the things that I've learned this, especially as being a new dad, is really taking care of yourself really does matter, because when you stop, it shows up very fast. It's, not just physical fitness, but mentally, spiritually, emotionally. If you're not making that time of your day for you or your week to escape, to de-stress, to go work out, that stress and all those hormones and all those frustrations, it all shows up, and eventually it's going to explode, or you're going to get lazy, you're going to get soft. I started working out again 2 weeks ago, my body's so sore. And I used to work out every single day, and I realized it's like, wow, my habit, I slacked off, and I started to see that trend, and I started to see where that road was taking me. It's like, oh, hey, you didn't work out this hard and long for the last 20 years, to go down this road. Start developing those disciplines that you have, but now you have the time, the flexibility, and the intention to actually go ahead and do it.
I love what you talked about there, because even just when you have physical soreness, that like that's real. Like it feels like you did real work outside of your head. And now you know that like I did something. For me, like one of my basics is like, because sometimes as you're trying to figure out this stuff, is you're working late nights and then you're trying to get up early in the morning because as a stay-at-home dad, trying to get the kids in the bus and everything, like you got to be on still while you're trying to figure all this out. For the gym habit in the morning, it's kind of like the jumper cables. Like no matter how low my operating system is, it's like the jumper cables that'll boot up my system. It'll get rid of the grogginess and I'll feel like I can conquer the day. And so for me, it's like a non-negotiable. Like no matter whether I've got 30 minutes or maybe I've overslept in the morning, I will still go to the gym to do 30-minute workout because I still need that jumper cable moment to kind of get everything up and running.
Right.
And that doesn't have to be perfect. Like you don't have to try to get everything into 100%, especially in those early years. You really just want to get things that you feel more energized after doing. So if it's meditation, whether it's going to the gym, whatever it may be, or going for a walk. Last year, my daughter was in preschool, and that was my only time to work on my business while she was gone. And I could have just spent my entire time sitting at my desk figuring things out. But I can't tell you how many times in the fall I would just be like, you know what? I'm not going to go back to the house. I'm going to go find a random place, and I would go for a walk. And it would be like a 45-minute walk on one of the paths we have in town. And I would feel like $1,000,000. Because one thing that I also know when I'm trying to take care of my health and trying to reboot myself in the past few years here is being in touch with nature has a lot of deep value to it. And one that I really quickly remembered and had to relearn is life is abundant. That when you go into nature, you see life literally all around you. There's trees, there's flowers, everything is flourishing around you. And as it's flourishing, it's that reminder that like life is everywhere. Even if we feel like we're having an internal storm, that idea that life is abundant and God is abundant everywhere as well. That is like, I'm not alone. This isn't just me, that life is everywhere, that the world isn't crumbling down. That feeling allows me to be grounded, allows me to separate my issues from other issues. And it's just a simple walk. That could be at your lunch hour. Like if maybe you're at a place that has a corporate walking path, go out there and just walk and be reminded of how abundant everything is around you. And while you may feel like the world's problems are just like way too much to carry, when you look at the width and the beauty of the world, everything kind of seems a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm. And there's so much truth about when you find those opportunities just to get away and stop thinking about the season that you're in, and just, like you said, take a walk. It's amazing how that 30 minutes can completely energize you and make you so much better. When even whether it's the gym or working out, when I finally started that before I started going back to the gym, I was like, oh, I'm constantly so tired. And but when I started going, I found that energy again, and it was amazing how much that really impacted my day. So it's a fight, but it's something I think that as a lot of dads, it's something that we tell ourselves is, oh, I don't have the energy to go. Well, you make the energy. So,
and the energy almost naturally comes once you get there. It's just this initial habit. Mel Robbins talks about how you have 5 seconds between you doing a decision and not doing a decision. And really all it takes in her method is the 5-second rule. Count down from 5 and you'll eventually figure it out and say yes, because the method is based on science that if you don't feel like doing something, it's an emotional decision. But by counting backwards from 5, you're using the front of your brain. The front of the brain is very logical, and it's going to come to the conclusion like, yeah, you should go to the gym. And so you get up and go to the gym. And in those 5 seconds, you can change your life if you repeat that over time. And really, it comes down to those 5 seconds, like realizing this moment. And maybe this is overwhelming for you that we're talking about. But something that I coach on a lot is every time you pause and consciously choose a new decision, make a different choice than the pattern that you continually do, you open yourself to an entirely new universe of possibility on that road. And if you repeat those changing choices, find your patterns and continue to make choices that change them one pattern at a time, You can literally rewire your life. And a lot of what you need to do as a new dad is just figure out those patterns that aren't serving you, make a choice to find something different in that pattern. And every time you do that, you open yourself up to an entire new way of thinking, and repeating that often enough, you'll get to where you want to go.
You know, I was listening last night to the secret, the Earl Nightingale. He talked about the secret to success, and he said this. And if you've never heard of this, YouTube Earl Nightingale, The Secret to Success. And I was listening to this about 32 minutes last night, and he said the most successful people, they're successful because of the way they think. So,
yeah,
you know, and it's it's the best 30 minutes I probably invested this week, but it was so good. And it was helping me prepare for today. But it really adds to what we were just talking about is if you don't like the results that you currently are getting, or if you don't like, you know, if you notice this trend of like you stop working out, you stop getting physical, you're on this path that you don't like, think about what you're thinking about. You know, what are the beliefs, what are the things that you are telling yourselves? And those limiting beliefs, they're called limiting beliefs for a reason. They limit you. And so if you don't like the path that you're on, take an assessment or recalibrate your life and just make a simple decision about, hey, I'm going to find, you know, you don't have to maybe go to the gym 5 days a week, but find an hour a week, find 2 days a week, and just go and see how that helps you and changes you, makes you feel better, and then progress. But you know, so often I think as guys we think, oh, I'm not working out 7 days a week anymore, so I'm not gonna do it. That's terrible thinking. Terrible. Find one day and just do it, and then like you said, repeat that pattern.
For me, when I came out of the Marine Corps, which is like the biggest running club in the world, I had this massive fear of running because I was never good at it. And I was always the guy that fell out of the formational runs. And so I was always like, every time I was running, I just felt like I was a bad person because it was just a fear. It was a feeling. I was like, let's just avoid that altogether. That ran for like almost 10 years. And when I finally did face this fear and got gym membership and got back into the gym, very quickly, I learned a few Killoyisms, as my friend calls them, that like I was doing dumbbells at the gym, like on day 2. And all of a sudden I started with like a 15 pound. And then like the next day I was like, it was too easy. So I moved up. And then I remembered something that was like, oh man, what's hard today will be easy tomorrow if you put in the reps. And then in like day 4, I realized that like each time I go to the gym, it's kind of like a daily deposit to make tomorrow better. And for me, I was doing it at 5 o'clock in the morning. So in this particular case, I was literally making a choice to make tomorrow better. And then no matter what kind of chaos came into my world today, no matter what kind of crap that came into my life at work, I just did something that's going to increase the likelihood that tomorrow is better. And if for any finance people out there, if you repeat that over time, the ROI is going to give you dividends back on that daily investment. And when you need to maybe take a day off, when you can't get to the gym, or when you're just having a rougher than normal day, you can pull back on those savings because you made those daily deposits. So you're making those deposits every day before the world kind of comes into your life. You're making them to make tomorrow better, but it's those daily deposits that over time will give you the dividends to have what you want. But it starts with just making a simple daily deposit. And no matter how small of deposit you make, any deposit will increase over time.
What do you think about? I'd like to hear your morning ritual, or how you've mastered this, or how you have grown this. So before I kind of talk into mine, I wanted to ask about yours.
So for me, this one is I've always evolved it. It has different season. I've had different structure to it. I've had different commitment to it. Like I remember my first awakening to this was The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod in like 2015. And so my kids were extremely young. I think probably like 3 and 1. I think we only had 2 at the time. And I remember getting up at 4:30 in the morning to get up before the kids got up. I remember doing my meditations. I remember doing my journaling. I remember doing my reading. I remember going outside for a walk. And that first time that I really started to establish a morning routine, I learned something going for a walk because like the sun would rise, that like that light hitting my skin was kind of like this reminder that this is a new day and I can do whatever I want today. And to me, it was kind of that first reminder that I could like influence today by like it showing up for myself in that morning routine there. I would be like, I can do this. Whatever today's going to bring me, I can do it. Now, as life comes and goes, it's always kind of either fell back to like didn't prioritize my morning routine. But something when I lost my job in January 2020, I've had to kind of relearn the morning routine because it's kind of a whole new experience when you don't have a place to go. Like when you don't have this external place that if you don't go up, you don't get paid. And when you have to do it internally, it's a whole new process of if you don't get up, you're the only one that suffers. And I'm sure as an entrepreneur, you've felt this that like if there's not that external marker to pull you, you've got to kind of rewire that on your own. So for me, what I've really learned is getting to the gym is my basic. That if I can get to the gym, that is my core like startup. And for me, my morning routine mostly consists of trying to get my stay-at-home dad duties done before my workday starts, before the kids get on the bus. But it really starts with me getting to the gym, me coming home, helping my wife transition out of the house, and then getting the kids on the bus. That is my modern day morning routine, but it's the one that serves me right now. And maybe as the kids change or the seasons change, I'll add some things back into it. But for right now, that seems to be what's working. And that's probably the primary message. There's a lot of shooting that can happen here with morning routines of all the different content out there and the different recommendations. Find what works, find what gives you the energy throughout the day, focus on it and use that. Don't hold yourself accountable to someone else's morning routine if this morning routine isn't serving you like it's supposed to on the billboard.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And when I think about the way you start your day, is it takes time to find it. You know what works best for you, and the way that you show up really matters. The way that you start your day. I like getting up. I like having that quiet time just for me. I am finally getting back in that habit of working out again in the mornings, and I'm noticing there's that energy that I've been missing. So there's so much truth to the way that you prepare, and even when you think about the way you optimize your day, there's a tool that I use. I shared this with you last time, but it's just a way that I think about. Hey, what are my tasks for today? It's that 5-10 minutes that I take of asking myself, what is the priorities that need to get done today? And I have a tool that I use, but it's just, hey, what's today's priorities? What needs to get done? What can I put on the back burner, and what can I begin to work on? And it's a quick 5 minutes that I do each and every morning, and that helps me. And so there's, like you said, there are so many different ways that you can focus on this, or think about the ways that you optimize your day. But it really starts with those first 30 minutes when you get up.
And if you're lost on this topic, like maybe not know where to begin and it all kind of feels overwhelming, I think one of the easiest habits that I fall back into is using the Calm app. She has Tamara on that app. She's got some of the ripest wisdom that she delivers every single day. She gives you a nice little meme that you can even share with that wisdom on it. And those 10 minutes that she structures in the Calm app, they can just really be the exact words that you need to kind of separate yourself from the BS in your head and the BS that the world might be telling you. And it does create that calming. And like I said in the beginning, it creates a space like mindfulness does between you and the reality that's in front of you. And to me, that's like, it's a simple membership that you pay to get it, but it's 10 minutes. She guides you through it. It's not a lot of things you got to figure out. You just got to follow her directions. She shares her wisdom for the day, and you've just invested 10 minutes. That'll hopefully be that also daily deposit that gives your mind a stronger muscle to separate, like, I am not this crying baby's feelings. I am my own person still. And it can happen in mindfulness. Mindfulness is a muscle, and there's scientific proof to show that when you do meditate, your mind does rewire itself. The pathways, the shape of its ability to deal with things, the brain scans show it does change how your brain behaves to life.
And I use one called Abide. It's more of a script. It's more focused through the Bible, but it's the same methodology of just calming yourself and thinking about what you're thinking about. And it's such a great tool that I've learned to really just like, I look forward to those 2 to 3 minutes of just meditation. I mean, it really makes such a big difference. And I just started doing it about 2-3 months ago, and man, it's definitely made a significant difference.
I want to point out how we're both seasoned dads. We're both seasoned self-help people, and we're still learning things to apply to our morning routine. That's, I think, a huge lesson on this. There's no final journey on your morning routine. Like I said, it's seasonal and it's based on what serves you right now. Find those things, give yourself grace for what maybe doesn't fit in, and keep living. And it's not something you have to completely stress yourself out over if you're not getting all the daily 5 in, or maybe daily 6 in for like a miracle morning type thing. It can be whatever you need it to be for the season that you're in. And you're never finished critiquing it.
No, you're always growing, always. So this is the second element, moving into the spiritual component. And we kind of touched on this just a little bit ago, and so I just wanted to forward to this one. But when you quiet your mind, one of the things that I've learned is that you learn how to minimize distractions. It's like Ben said, when I've taken these 2 to 3 minutes in the morning, I love that. It makes me think about what I'm thinking about, and I've started journaling again. I have before this season, I used to journal. I probably have about 15 years of journals, and so I love journaling because it helps me kind of like get out of my own head and get the thoughts out on paper. And there's so much wisdom by doing that. And so many guys used to ask me, "How do you journal?" I was like, "What do you mean, how do you journal? Just write." But I would have a series of questions and ask, what are you grateful for, or what's on your mind, and what are the things that you are learning in this season. And it would just be a way that I would just, again, kind of take what I'm learning of that day and journal about it, and then it would either free me of that thought, or it would help me to think about more about what I'm doing. But it's been such a great practice. But also from a spiritual component is, as you're going through this season, one thing that, I am a Christian, I know you are too, Ben, but, going through this season, I've learned a long time ago that anytime you have new seasons, you can't do this alone. And so as you think about, developing that relationship with God, again, this opens the door to that conversation of, when are you doing that? Are you making that time for yourself to grow spiritually? And so this is just another thing that I've learned that I need if I really want to show up, is that I need that, because there's I know enough about myself that I can't do it all.
One question I've recently learned from some stuff from Michael Singer, who wrote the Untethered Soul book, man, is like really deep into the whole spiritual realm of meditation and Yoda. Yoga is the right word that I'm trying to get out. And there's a question he asked in one of his books, and he says, "Are you in there?" And it's a very interesting, weird question, because no one really gets asked that question, "Are you in there?" And his whole real thesis of this "Are you in there?" is, you are not your actual thoughts. Your consciousness is actually, there's a space between your consciousness of who you are and the thoughts you have about what's ever going on. And he kind of articulates in this way, where we were talking about the space of just thinking about or observing what you're thinking about, not reacting to it, that I am not this thought, I am not this negative limiting belief, that the world isn't really true, that person really doesn't hate me, that is just your mind trying to make sense of what it doesn't feel. And he also talks about that the soul goes to hide in the mind when the heart's afraid of what it's feeling. And so also realize how your mind's working. And usually when you're overthinking something, I'm an overthinker, and I'm still a recovering overthinker. I've barely gotten through level 1, I would say, on overthinking. To me, that's often because the heart's feeling something I don't necessarily have the presence to notice, and I'll just go think about it. And really what I'm thinking about is what I need to be into my heart about and feel. So this idea of spiritual is actually like separating the mind of what you're thinking, but really getting in touch with what you feel, whether it be a memory with your baby, or as they grow up, or maybe with your wife, like really getting in touch with your heart. And as two dads talking to other dads here, that may sound like completely foreign language to talk about your feelings and to get into your heart, but there's only 13 inches between your head and your heart. But those 13 inches for men can be the longest 13 inches that we ever travel. But as a dad, as your kids get older, that journey to be able to connect to your heart and to connect to your kids' stories when they're having a hard day, that will serve you tenfold, because you're not going to use your problem-solving ability mostly with your kids when they get older. You're going to use your ability to connect on an emotional level of I hear you, I see you, and I can understand, empathize with what you're saying. That's a feeling that comes from the heart. That's not something that comes from the head.
Right. And when you think about, this is something, another reason why I started talking this Mr. New Dad series is because, take a look at the world around us, whether it's in the veteran community, whether it's in, the community around us. We know the role of dad. We know the role and the impact that a dad has on a child. My 7-month-old right now is mimicking the actions that I'm doing. So when you think about these things, these disciplines that you are learning about yourself now, the habits and the disciplines and the way that you manage your stress, the way that you manage your emotions and your heart, and if you're willing to have those conversations, if you're willing to pray with your kids or pray with your wife, they are watching. And when you think about the man or woman that you are developing, that's huge. And that's one of the things that kind of drives me as a new dad is, I'm growing a future man. And that's huge. I mean, that's just like it inspires me to want to teach him things that I've learned along the way that my dad taught me, or the things that my dad didn't teach me. But it's an opportunity for me to really kind of keep myself in check and think about, hey, what am I thinking about? But also, what am I showing? What are my actions showing to my son or daughter?
One of the coolest social media things that I often see is a dad exercising with his toddler, and the toddler like doing the little like mocking it or trying to do it with him. Just like it's a good social media post, but think of the ramifications of that kid seeing his dad be fit and be active from the very beginning. And it's going to be one that, like, for example, my daughter and I just ran in a 5K with Girls on the Run, which is a program that helps girls kind of just tap into their own power and realize they can do more. At 9 years old, she's already having a love of running. And I just confessed at 24, I had a fear of running. And so like in this particular case, imagine like the dividends her falling in love with running is going to have from 9 years to the rest of her life. These little deposits that we're making, I mean, you won't get to see the end result right away, but showing how these are actually healthy habits that build strong character, that build strong lives. I mean, it's hard to see, but the dividends, and you're going to feel it when they start doing something on their own. Like, hey, dad, they're going to come up to you one day and they're like, hey, dad, can we go over for a run? Or hey, dad, can we go to the garage to a workout? They're not doing that maybe for the fitness. They're doing it as a way to spend time with you. So we often think as dads, oh, we need this space, but we're not going to have enough time because we got to leave the kids and go to the gym. Eventually you get to the point where it's a family affair. I can't tell you how many walks that I go on the subdivision out here, and half the neighborhood follows me, where it's like they want to join in on this walk, and it's because you're leading and they want to be there with you. And it's something that kind of just happens naturally over time if you invest in this time going forward.
I agree. Eric Reed in the comments, he said, we connect with our kids best when we move into our heart. And I feel like that's such a, it's something you don't really think about, but it's something that, in order to get to your kids, it's something that only you can begin to show that. So, the next slide, as we're talking about different habits, things that you are bringing into yourself and developing this self-care. This emotional health is something that I've learned in the season that I've been in is, how much attention how are you paying attention to the things around you? There is your wife, there is your child. Are you paying attention? Especially as a husband, I feel like this is something that you have to learn to practice, learning how to listen. And that's so cliche, but there are 3 different levels of listening, and that's another topic. But the second one is so important because the first is like what you hear. The second is what is being said, what's actually being said, but you don't hear it. What is showing up, and are you actively listening and paying attention to your wife? Are you looking for ways to serve? Are you paying attention to those emotional triggers and those emotional needs, not only of your wife, but of you as well? And I think the more intentional you are about practicing those things and setting those healthy boundaries and keeping that protection around yourself, your family, it's really going to impact you as a dad so much more.
One of my favorite listening tips, and it solves a lot of problems at once. So often, a common problem is you're in the kitchen doing something, preparing something, or you're in the other part of the house folding laundry or something, and the kids either are screaming for you or they need something, or maybe you're in the kitchen cooking something and you want to give the kids direction of, hey, clean up the living room because we're going to be eating dinner soon. And it often turns into a shouting match that you're like trying to and then you start raising your voice because they're not listening. And so you're trying to get their attention. Couple things that I've learned over the years is remember into their world, like it's just wah, 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 wah. They don't hear what you're saying. And like, while you said it multiple times, they most likely still didn't hear it. So the way that I kind of approach this listening, and it doesn't happen all the time, but I often remember that I need to do it more, is walking over to them, like holding their hand physically, which like kind of connects you like in this moment of now they're paying attention to you. Then tell them the instructions in a nice calm voice, tell them what you need them to do. And by then, you're also avoiding the shouting learning that oftentimes parents wonder, where do kids learn to shout? Well, it's usually because we're shouting some instruction across the house, and that's just how they learn to communicate as a standard. And by going over to them and talking to them and grounding them with like a physical touch, you can enter their world a little bit, have a little simple conversation and talk about it. And then you also give an opportunity for them to focus and listen. And maybe they have something to say. And that moment, like if you repeat that enough times, like sometimes it's like the kids are shouting at me from upstairs and I'm downstairs. Instead of shouting upstairs, I will sometimes go up the stairs into the room to talk to them instead of shouting. It takes a little more effort and steps, but being their presence that I don't have to shout allows to make sure that one, whatever I want them to hear is heard and that they are listening. That's the most important component. Just because you said something doesn't mean they acknowledged it or even received it, especially any kid under 10, maybe even a little bit older, because all my kids are older. So maybe that are younger. So maybe that does still continue. But the idea of entering their world when you want to communicate, to me, that is something that can lead to big dividends in the shouting, the communication, and not having to repeat yourself with different instructions.
Yeah. Wow. How the last bullet on here. This is something that I've learned to be very intentional about as far as it keeps my cup full. Is when I can have conversations with other guys, other dads. I have a men's group that I'm a part of at church. I have a mastermind that I have every month with other business leaders. They're all men. But then also I have other guys that I meet with on my board. And so having this inner circle of people that you meet with, especially those men that kind of can pour into your life, that's one thing that I've learned. It's been so, I didn't realize it was going to be so beneficial for me in this season, but man, that's one thing that I've really learned to value is those close connections and close friends that I can kind of like, hey, can I have 5 minutes? Or I'm going through something. Can you allow me to vent, or can you pour into me for a moment? So what do you think about that, Ben?
So we can all, because we're talking about not losing yourself, not losing your identity. To me, the core reason we need friends is because they're the mirrors for the things that we can't see. Well, we have these thoughts that say like, oh man, I hopefully nobody notices that I'm underperforming or that I'm becoming this person. Friends never see that. And so having a close circle of friends that you trust and are like right-minded people within that mind is also a mirror to see what you're not seeing. And they can reflect back like what you're talking about. Like you just need someone to pour into you because they're going to see who you are and where you're going and the positive of that. They're not going to see all the stress that you have every day. They're only going to see the positive, and just kind of being reinforced of that can be one that can be like, oh man, it felt good to really be reminded that I am not my thoughts, that I am not this person, that this person isn't even in reality. This is just in my head. But oftentimes the more closer we get to attaching ourselves to the reality in front of us, this is why we've been talking about mindfulness, because you need that space. You need to know that like whatever I'm feeling today, it doesn't have to be the definition of me. And having that so close circle of friends, I can tell you I'm here today because friends reflected back a version of myself that I then started pursuing. If it wasn't for those friends, I wouldn't be doing any of the work that I'd be doing today.
And there's so much truth behind you are the average of the 5 closest people around you. And so when you surround yourself with people like that, not only are you getting something out of it, but they're also, stretching your thinking and challenging your thoughts. But one of the things, and I'll touch on this before we move on, but having that close group of friends, and it is the one place that you can be vulnerable. And I'm a big fan of having at least 3 men in your life that you can be that vulnerable with. And vulnerability is a strength. I'm a big fan of that. But it's also it's something that you should protect as well, because not everybody should have that access to you, and you should really protect that, because there's something there. That's very important stuff. But my challenge for you, if you don't have 2 to 3 guys in your life, go find them. I'm sure that there are friends in your life that if you were to have that conversation with, people are willing to pour into you and build up that inner circle. It's called an inner circle for a reason.
There is a word that we all know we don't exercise enough, and that's hello. I am a huge proponent that on the other side of hello is conversations that'll change your life, and you're only one word away from having your life changed, repeated over time. And so if like you're wondering where to get started, hello is the first word. Like for me, I started with dads at the park, and my favorite question to start a conversation was, "Hey, how old are your kids?" It worked. It was a back door. They never saw it coming, and they would always open up and start talking, because we always like talking about our kids. And then that always became a conversation where we could talk about anything after that. And those conversations repeated over time is how I created friends and have who I have today in my life, because I said hello, I learned different things. And what you're talking about is so core to everything that we're talking about. Like, men were never wired to do life alone. The core thing of not losing yourself is reminding yourself that you are not in this journey alone, that there are other people that have done exactly what you've done. There are people that cross the crucibles of this poopy diaper that you've done and just did right now, that there's people every day that deal with poopy onesies. You're not the only one that deals with this. And reminding yourself, finding people at the same seasons of you just to joke about it, to feel connected. I mean, that can lead to $1 million feelings of, we can get through this together.
Mm. Eric Reed said in the comments, our network of men reminds us of the dreams we hold about who we want to become when we become lost in who we are.
Yeah, a lot of truth in that comment, Eric.
Yeah. Thanks, Eric. So this is the end of today's presentation, but I do want to encourage, if you're catching this webinar or if you're catching the replay, and if something resonated with you, or you found yourself in that, man, that's me right now, or I don't know where to go from here, you're not alone. I'm speaking to myself here. I started working with a coach about 4 months ago. I am a coach, but I know the value of having a coach in your life, whether it's in group coaching or one-on-one. It's something that has completely made me who I am and made me successful in my business, in my life, in my marriage, is by being able to have those transparent conversations, but then also to really get real with yourself, because you have this idea of this end goal or this image, but sometimes, I'm speaking to myself here, but you get in your own way, your thoughts get in your own way. And I think men especially are so good at analyzing and being stuck, and analysis by paralysis, or paralysis by analysis. And it's hard. Coaching is a tool that I use with all of my clients to have those conversations, to get past those conversations. Both Ben and I are coaches, and we work with dads, we work with business leaders to grow themselves. And whether it's working with a team or working with individuals, it's something that works. And so if something resonated with you today and you'd like to have a conversation about that, I offer a complimentary coaching session to every one of my clients, just to kind of see where you're at and see if this is a good fit for you. So if you would like to have those conversations or learn more about that, feel free to follow up either with me or Ben. I know he would be more than happy to have that conversation with you. Currently, I have 2 openings starting in December, and so I am throwing that out there. Also, and it's kind of where I'm seeing the direction of this group. In 2022, in January, I want to start this community. I have started a Telegram channel called Mr. Doondad, but in 2022, I'm going to be starting a coaching program that really focuses on that new dad, and growing yourself, taking these things that we're talking about today and actually implementing them. And so be on the lookout for that. It's something that I'm working on, and I'll continue to be working on the rest of this year. But I'm really excited about it. So I'll go ahead and punt it over to you, Ben.
I love what you put at the top of this, ready to grow. We often talk about what we're going through. I want you to reframe that and think about what are you growing through? That life isn't meant to grow through what life gives us. And every day is an opportunity to grow through something because then you become stronger when you grow through it. Life is not happening to us, it's happening for us. And what most men get wrong is our entire life up to this day of you listening to this webinar has been happening for you. And there's a story that's been happening for you, but most of that story has been told in a way that's happening to you, and you feel like it's almost dead weight that's holding you back. Coaching is a powerful way to reframe that story to become the jet fuel to take you even further than you've ever imagined. My story has been reframed to help me become who I am. Early in my life, people pushed me down so that later in life, I would be ready to pull people up. And that gave everything in my story purpose and power. And it allowed me to step into a higher calling of being coach myself because I realized I was just being prepared to see another man's eyes and know I know exactly what you're feeling and I can help pull you up. And if I had not been pushed down early in life, I wouldn't be as empathetic. I wouldn't be as quickly connecting. And everything has been preparing me for this moment to be able to be this type of person in my life and for other men. So take this opportunity to invite these conversations. This invitation to change your life is really one where clarity is what most men are missing. And we really need clarity to go forward in the future. And oftentimes, what we're really stuck on is we're almost like in a room where it's foggy and we don't really know where to go. And that clarity can give you direction, and that direction can change your life.
And even though I want to end this, especially since it's Veterans Week, the holidays are approaching. As I think about the things that I've experienced this week, I've had, yesterday I went to a funeral for an 11-year-old girl, and it was probably one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do, and I really didn't know how to feel. And I empathize with that dad, and I want to reach out to that dad. The point is, if you are in that season where you are just being attacked, or you are just under unexpected events, tragic events, especially if you are a veteran going into the season of the holidays, reach out. Find those men that you can reach out to. One thing that I have learned, and it's a limiting belief that I've learned, that there is no truth to, is that no one will listen. There are so many people that I've come across, Ben's one of them, who will give you his time, who will help you through a challenge, help you through a season. And it's something that I just learned to love about the power of coaching, because it's really helped me think differently about what I was thinking about. And so if that defines you, or if you are that veteran that is going through that challenging season, um, don't be one of those 22 men or 22 veterans that commit suicide every day. Reach out to somebody who can help you through that time, because just like Ben said, there are 5 seconds, but between a decision and action, and so all it takes is 5 seconds. So reframe that thought.
And I love what you're talking about with the veterans, because in my limiting belief is the same way. Like my issue was everybody's too busy and my problems aren't big enough. And even just recently, I realized that I was also applying that to God. That was like, God, you've got bigger problems. The world's burning down. My problems are too big for me to bring to you. And the moment I did bring them to him, almost immediately solutions started to show up in my life. So this idea that people are too busy is just a narrative in your head, and understanding that people are willing to be people. And we don't hear that narrative on the media enough. But when you just go into society, generally what you're going to find is good people. And even as parents, I often joke, it takes a village to raise your family. It's been spoken for decades, but that's often what I lean on. Like, we were never meant to do this whole thing called parenting alone. And we need to lean on the village. And that means when asking for help when you need it. That means asking a neighbor if you need help getting the kids on the bus that day. Like, it does take a village effort, and leaning on that the village generally does want to help you get to where you do, because we're all in this together.
Right. Well, thanks again, Ben, for being here. And again, if you want to learn anything more about what we're doing, feel free to reach out to us on any one of the social media platforms. But we're here to help you go through the season. So thanks again for being here. And until next time, be awesome and be well. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.